The worst mistake you can make tonight is to fall asleep thinking you're alone. Not because something is waiting for you in the dark, but because something has already been here, longer than you've lived in this house, longer than you've been alive, possibly. And it doesn't move. It listens. You already know this on some level. That's why you don't close your eyes all the way, not really. That's why you keep the door slightly open. That's why your breathing slows, but never fully settles. You've felt it before. You just never had a name for it. Until now. Researchers who study sleep anomalies, not psychiatrists, not neurologists, but the people who sit in dark rooms and just listen, they have a term for what happens in the 4 minutes before you lose consciousness. They call it the threshold silence. It's not silence as in absence of sound. It's silence as in everything goes quiet in a way that feels wrong. The house stops settling. The street goes still. Even your own thoughts begin to feel like they're coming from somewhere slightly outside your head. You've experienced the threshold silence. Tonight, you will again. Most people don't notice it because they're already halfway gone. But when you notice it, when something makes you aware of it, the silence doesn't end. It deepens. You're probably thinking, this is just anxiety, overactive imagination, your brain stitching noise into patterns because that's what brains do. That's a reasonable thought. That's the correct thought, actually, if you're in a normal room, in a normal house, on a normal night. But here's the thing about the threshold silence. It doesn't care about your logic. And right now, in this exact moment, your room is a little too quiet, isn't it? Don't check. Don't look around. Just notice it. That's all it needs. But that's not even the unsettling part. The threshold silence has a rule. One rule. And once you know it, you will never be able to unknow it. The rule is this. When the silence deepens, when it moves past that point of wrongness into something that feels almost physical, you will hear a sound. Not a loud sound, not a crash, not a voice. A small sound, a specific sound, one you recognize immediately. For some people, it's a creak. For some, it's a door handle that shifts by 2 degrees. For some, it's the sound of their own name, spoken in a register that doesn't match anyone they know. The first time you hear your own name in the threshold silence, you will assume it was a dream. It wasn't a dream. I want to tell you about a man named Daniel. Daniel was 31 years old, lived alone in a 2-room apartment on the 5th floor of a building in a city it doesn't matter to name. He was not superstitious. He was an engineer. He believed in measurements. Daniel began waking at precisely 3:17 every morning. Not 3 o'clock, not 3:30, not approximately. Precisely 3:17 for 11 consecutive nights. No alarm, no noise, no dream he could remember. He would wake and the room would be, and this is the word he used in his journal, correct. Everything exactly where it should be, unchanged, except the chair in the corner of his room, his reading chair, the one he had not sat in for weeks. When he woke at 3:17, it was always facing the bed. Daniel left the chair where it was. He didn't move it back. He wanted to see if it would happen again. It didn't. Not to the chair. On the 12th night, he woke at 3:17 and the chair was facing the window. Not the bed, the window, looking out. And that's when he understood something that sleep researchers have documented in 14 independent case studies across 4 countries. They call it the watcher's position. It's not about the object that moves. It's about the angle of observation. Whatever shifts in your room during the threshold silence is always oriented toward something. A window, a door, a wall, a person. It's never random. It never moves without purpose. It watches from exactly the angle it needs to watch from. The question Daniel asked his journal on night 12 was the right one. What needs to look out the window? And what is it looking for? He never answered it. But here's where this gets genuinely strange. You're thinking about the furniture in your room right now, aren't you? Don't. That's the wrong thing to focus on. Objects don't matter. Objects are just indicators. What matters is the mirror. Not every room has a chair, but almost every room has a mirror, or a window that becomes a mirror at night, or a screen, a phone, a laptop, dark, reflective, angled just slightly toward the bed. You already know which surface in your room acts as a mirror after midnight. You've always known. You just never said it out loud. There is a rule in ghost research, not the television kind, the kind done in silence with instruments, called the mirror rule. The mirror rule states, never position a reflective surface so that it can see your bed from across the room. Not because of what you'll see in it. That's not the danger. The danger is what the mirror is doing when you're not looking at it. A mirror that can see you while you sleep is not a passive object. It's an open door with no frame. It doesn't close when you fall asleep. It doesn't stop reflecting. And if something uses the threshold silence to observe, a mirror that faces your bed is an invitation. You didn't know you sent, but you sent it. Every night. I want to be precise with you about what this means. I'm not saying something climbs out of the mirror. I'm not saying you'll see a face. Those stories belong to a different genre. What I'm saying is simpler and worse. When you wake between 3 and 4 in the morning, not because of a sound, not because of a nightmare, but for no reason, from a deep sleep, and the room feels exactly the way a room feels when someone has just left it. That's not anxiety. That's not your body's natural sleep cycle. That is the threshold silence completing. Whatever was here has finished what it was doing, and you woke up precisely late enough to miss it. And here's the part I've been waiting to tell you. The part that the researchers only published in one paper, and then the paper was removed. Not retracted, not corrected. Removed. Across every documented case of watchers' position behavior, the chair, the objects, the mirrors, the 3:17 wake, there is one consistent detail. One thing every person in every case had in common. They all listened to something before sleep. A podcast, a video, a voice narrating in the dark. The sound functions as a signal, they wrote. It marks the room as occupied, as aware, and something that uses threshold silence to observe. It is specifically drawn to rooms where a voice is present but the person is not yet fully gone. That window, between waking and sleep. You're in that window right now. You expected a story, a narrative arc, a person in a house, something in the dark, a climax, a resolution. Instead, you got a briefing. You expected the horror to be out there, in Daniel's apartment, in a case file, in someone else's chair, facing someone else's window. But actually, the case file is this room, tonight, right now. You expected me to say, this was all theoretical, sleep well, but I won't say that, because it isn't theoretical. And sleep is exactly the problem. Not because of what comes while you sleep, that part you'll never know about, because of what happens in the 4 minutes before. The threshold silence has already started. If you wake tonight, between 3 and 4, don't check the chair. Don't look at the mirror. Don't check your phone. Lie still. Breathe. Wait for the threshold silence to pass. It always passes. If something in this room has assumed the watcher's position, you won't know. That's the design of it. You were never meant to know. The only rule that still applies: never say out loud that the room feels wrong. Never name it, because naming it inside the threshold silence is the one thing that makes it stay. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it wants. We only know that when you fall asleep tonight, the last sound in this room will be your own breathing, getting slower, getting quieter, until you can't hear it at all. Sleep well.